Hey, welcome back. My name's Justin. Today's another episode of Edrum News, where I keep you guys up to date on everything happening in the world of electronic drums. And there's a lot that's been happening recently. Just today, Roland has announced 3 brand new drum sets. 2 of them are flagships, and there's an all-new next-generation module that's replacing the TD50X. We've got a new Alesis drum set, the Nitro Pro, and Zildjian's making some very important announcements as well. So we're going to cover all of that in today's video. But first, today's video is brought to you by Edrum Center. If you're shopping for electronic drums, no matter what the brand is, go give Edrum Center a shot. They're a great drum store that knows electronic drums inside and out. Use my discount link below. It helps support the channel, and you're buying from a great drum store based in Tennessee. There are a bunch of new components this time around. We'll talk about how they're different in a second. But first, let's cover the 3 brand new drum sets and what the upgrades are over the old kits. So the first drum set is the VAD-716. This is replacing the VAD-706. The first upgrade, of course, is going to be the new V71 module. There's also a new upgraded version of the digital snare, which I was not expecting to see them upgrade, so that's cool to see. You get a 4th tom now for no extra charge, so that's great. There's a new kick drum, and there's also a new color option. The next drum set is the TD-716, which is kind of like a co-flagship with the VAD-716. That's why the names match. The TD drums are the same tier as the VAD drums, they're just more compact and they use drum racks. So this kit is replacing the TD50 KV2. Here are the upgrades over the old drum set. Once again, it's the V71 module, the new snare drum, there's a new kick drum, and all the toms are actually new. It's not just a visual change either. These are definitely thinner than the old ones, but they're actually different on the inside too. And then we got the TD-713, which is replacing the TD50 K2. As you're probably expecting, it's also got the digital snare, the new module, a smaller kick drum, which is kind of surprising to see, and they put 4 toms on this drum set, while the old kit only had 3. And these are not the new toms. These are the PDX-100s as far as I can tell. The other tiny change, which I almost missed, is that one of the crashes is a CY14 RT instead of the CY14 CT, like on the TD50 K2. So as you probably noticed, there's a bunch of changes here with new components. Let's cover them one by one. We're going to talk about the new drums first and the modules second. There's a lot going on in module land, which we'll talk about. So first up, we have the new digital snare drum. This is the PD14 DSX. So what's new here? First of all, there's a snare throw-off, and it's like a 3-in-1 combo. So you get the snare throw-off, which physically does make a clinking sound when you turn it on or turn it off, which you can control inside of the module, believe it or not. In addition to that, there's also a dial which you can turn right and left, just like on a regular acoustic snare, to change the tension of those wires. And then in addition, it's a button. So when you press the button, you can assign it to different things, like you can press it and then it will start a song that you want to play, that sort of thing. I think this is very smart. It kind of reminds me of the DWE. I don't know if the DWE snare made them want to try it on their snare because they bought DW, or if it was like always in development. But this is very nice to see. The second difference is the rubber rim situation. So instead of putting the rubber rim on top of the metal rim, they put it just inside the metal rim. The reason why they did this is that they wanted to make sure the rubber rim wasn't as tall, because that, changes the dynamic with how far your stick is from the drum head to the top of the rim. So hopefully this will make doing rim shots feel a little bit more natural. Roland also made a point to mention that their new snare is specifically better than the old one because it allows you to play more expressively. It seems to be a combination of the ability for it to detect right and left hand articulations, along with the help of modeling.
We can create the more than 16,000 velocity for the modern engines. This is interpolate the technology, I think, for the snare part. The snare part detect the right and left the position, and so we can the sound separate waveforms. This is one of a big deal for this the module.
I don't see any new mention of like an extra sensor that this new snare drum has, aside from the throw-off stuff. So this might be just better signal processing or invisible upgrades they're not talking about in the spec sheet. I don't know. Whether or not this matters in real life, we'll have to find out. This is just me talking about the news. Of course, I'm going to have to play it to know if it actually is a legit upgrade or not. Let's be real. Roland already had the most advanced electronic snare drum in the industry. You could already do cross-stick just because it sensed your hand resting on the drum head. No other snare could do that. So obviously, positional sensing, different depths of rim shot sensing, and now having a snare throw off. This is, once again, the most advanced electronic snare there is. The next new components are the tom pads on the TD716. Here's a side-by-side with the old ones from the TD50. It is a significant change inside and out. There's a new force sensor system in the center to minimize hot spotting while retaining positional sensing. Sorry, I don't have a photo of it, so I don't know what it looks like and I can't show you. Also, you'll notice that there's that funky inner rubber rim there, so it matches the snare drum. And visually, they're thinner, more pad-like compared to the TD50 toms. If I had to guess why, I'd say that Roland is trying to make their VAD lines and TD lines look more distinct from each other. And the older TD50 toms, they looked more similar to the VAD 307 than maybe Roland would like. That's just a thought. I don't know if it's actually true or not, but it looks like quarter shells are no longer a thing going forward on TD drums. By the way, the interesting thing is, this TD version, it actually has toms that can do positional sensing, and the VAD version of this kit cannot. So that's the one advantage this kit has. Now, whether or not the sound set inside of the V71 supports positional sensing tone differences on the toms, I don't know yet. All right, so next up, we got the new kick drums. So these new kick drums have this same sort of look, and they're almost the same as the old ones, but the foam surface pad is bigger. They have a 6.4-inch playing surface, and I can't remember how big the other one was, but it was smaller. I think enough people just were complaining that they didn't have enough room, in case the beaters were a little bit larger, like on DW pedals. So Roland caved and just made the playing surface a little bit bigger. The way these kick drums work is that there's this foam pad, it's mounted onto an acoustic drum head, and then there's this black plate on top of it that dampens everything and gives it a clean overall look. Honestly, I was hoping they would go with the DWE kick drum since they own that company now, because I liked it a lot. It felt great. It's quieter. It's mesh. I wish they'd gone with that, but at least they upgraded what they already had. So yeah, it is what it is. The TD713 got a more significant change to its kick drum though. The shell is 12 inches across, but the strike surface is 7.5 inches. And as you can tell, I believe it's the foam material that the other kick drums are using. This is a pretty big departure from the older kick drum it's replacing, which was the KD140. I really like that one, and I'm kind of sad they're getting rid of it because it was incredibly sturdy, it was heavier, it was larger, it felt amazing to play on. But, this one is the one that's replacing it. I'll have to see how it feels when I actually get a chance to sit down and play it. It's probably going to feel like a better version of a KD10, but I don't know. So next up is the Roland V71 module, which is replacing the TD50X module. And that module, it was getting kind of old. It's based on the TD50 that launched in 2016, so this is a well-needed upgrade. I'm not going to rattle off every tiny little spec about this because we would be here all day, but here are the highlights, and then I'll do a quick comparison to the TD50X to show you how the body, like the shell, changed. Okay, so first of all, there's a lot of DW samples inside of here. Not that they just grabbed all the sounds from the DWE Soundworks plugin. It seems like they recorded unique sounds for this module specifically. Round-robin samples mixed and recorded at 32-bit 192 kilohertz. But of course, it's not just a drum plugin put inside of a module. Roland doesn't do that sort of thing. These are nice samples, and then they put their next generation sound engine on top of it. It used to be called the Prismatic Sound Engine, and before that it was Supernatural, and before that was Cosm. I don't know what this new one is called because they didn't tell us. But anyway, you can do all the normal Roland crazy stuff, like change the virtual shell depth, the beater material, the head type, cymbal adjustments, virtual mic placement, control the amount of snare buzz on the head and rim zones independently, all that kind of stuff. The stuff that if you like Roland, you like it because of this sort of thing. And thankfully, even with all these new samples, which appear to be recorded at maybe a higher quality than before, the load times are still really, really quick, which is something that you don't truly appreciate until you start using other modules that have a loading time. So I'm happy to see that you're not going to be sitting around for 30 seconds. Roland is also claiming 16,000 levels of dynamics. They say it's a combination of the depth of their sampling along with their processing and stuff. So anyway, that's the marketing thing, 16,000 levels of dynamics. The next thing is that there's a sound toggle that is called like drummer position and producer position. The way this works is if you have it in the drummer position, it'll pan all the drums and cymbals as if you're sitting behind the kit and use a natural processing pipeline. So it's not going to be super heavy-handed with like compression and the ambience and everything. It's going to just try to be natural as if you're playing a drum set. And then there's a producer position toggle. If you press that, it'll make the radio mix version of the sound as if you're the producer inside of the studio listening to the drums once there's compression and effects on it. So this kind of solves a problem, hopefully, if it's implemented right. Because sometimes drummers go into playing electronic drums and they want to hear a stripped back, more natural sound, like basically what F note is trying to do. Or other times drummers want to have a heavy hitting, like, fat radio sound. And so now they just give you the ability to go back and forth on the same kit. I'm looking forward to trying this out and seeing how heavy-handed it is and whether or not it's actually a legit thing or just a cool thing in a marketing kind of situation. Something else which I believe is new is that it sounds like you can have 3 instruments per zone, which is kind of crazy if you really think about it. So that's not just 3 one-shot samples, that's 3 full-on, multi-layered instruments. So that's cool. There's also the V71 editor software, which I downloaded. I couldn't mess around with it because you need to connect the module first. But you can just adjust every adjustment that you would inside the module on a legit laptop screen. So that's going to be a lot nicer because even with the new color screen, it's a little bit on the small side. Doing it on a computer may be a little bit easier. Another thing is there's Bluetooth and there's also Wi-Fi now. There's also extensive mixing, routing. There's 4 effect buses. There's basically a DAW worth of editing tools inside of the V71. Now, switching over to the buttons and the inputs and outputs, let's compare both the modules side by side. The new one, the V71, and the old TD50X. So, starting on the back, the V71 now has an upgrade, balanced 1/4-inch master outs, in addition to the balanced XLRs and direct outs. That's a nice, well-needed upgrade. I like that. They also switched away from using the AC cable with the internal power brick. Now they're using an external DC power brick. I'm a little sad to see this go because, don't ask how I know this, but if you were to go to a gig with, forgetting your cable, it's a lot easier to find the AC cable than it is to find the exact rated power brick that you would need. There's a ground terminal now, that's new. It's the screw looking thing right here. Over on the side, they changed over the USB port to the newer Type-C connection. That's a nice upgrade. On the front of the module, we actually lost a port. So the TD50X has 2 mix-in ports, a 1/4-inch on the back and an 1/8-inch one on the front next to the headphone jacks. This new one omits that second mix input, and I guess they're just going to say we replaced it with Bluetooth as the second aux in. Moving to the front, obviously we get the color screen. Thank God, that was well needed. They also got rid of those 3 control dials. Instead, they're going back to what the older modules, like the TD30 did. F1, 2, 3, 4, that kind of thing. You can also change kits in the dark more confidently because the buttons are backlit and so is this main control dial. And I believe you can change the color of it as well. They also did some general reshuffling of where the buttons and dials are. I think lining up the mix-in, song, and click with their buttons, to the right, that visually makes more sense than this weird pyramid thing that the TD50X did. There's also a phones only button up top. Bluetooth exists, so it's got its own button. When it comes to the overall size, the V71 is 2 pounds heavier, and it's not exactly the same shape. So it's like a little bit wider, but not quite as long, that sort of thing. And one last surprising thing I want to mention is that the sample import limit is unchanged. So if you wanted to bring in one-shot samples on both modules, it is still 12 minutes of stereo audio, or 24 minutes mono. Now we got to talk about the Roland Cloud, because Roland was heavily pushing this in all their different promo videos. It's in the manual, there's a dedicated button up on the module for it, and they really want you to get into the Roland Cloud. So let's cover it real quick. Here's the way it works. If you create an account on the Roland website and download the Roland Cloud app to your phone or your computer, now you have the ability to wirelessly transfer new kits over to your module. This includes round-robin samples. It's not just like one-shot samples layered into pre-existing instruments. No, these are actual all-new kits. They're legit kits. As you might expect, some of these are free and some of them are not. So individual kits, they're like $30. That'll give you one complete kit with several mixing presets of that kit. Or the DWE Soundworks app, that's $200. It comes with the DWE drum set, and you can also get it inside of the Roland Cloud, trigger your Roland drums through it. Or you can just pay a monthly fee and get access to all the kits, including that expensive plugin, all for one price every month. And you'll get access to new upcoming kits as they're released. 6 months of the Ultimate subscription come free with the kit. So I think that's why they're saying that the SoundWorks app is bundled with the kit. If I'm understanding this correctly, that's a technicality. Yes, it's bundled with the kit for 6 months, and then to continue using the app, you have to pay for the subscription or buy it outright. That's my understanding. I could be slightly off there. So anyway, it's clear that Roland is trying to be the Netflix of plugins and sound packs. They really just want to be the one-stop shop to get all these different sound options, not only for drums, but keyboards and just producer-type things. They're trying to be the Netflix of sound. And they really want you to spend $20 a month for the rest of your life. The question is it actually worth it? I would just get the free account and then buy whatever individual kits that you want. It's just going to be way more economical. I was really surprised to see that they have retro packs where you can download sounds from the TD50X and the TD30. That's something that has never been possible before, to add sounds from older modules into your current module. Okay, so we're almost done with the Roland news. We're going to talk about the new Zildjian news and the new Alesis news in a second. But before I do, let me take one nerd tangent to talk about something probably almost nobody will care about, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. Why did Roland change the name of so many things with this new line of electronic drums and the new module? If they went by the old system, this drum set would have been called the TD70KV, this drum set would have been the TD70K, and the module would have been called the TD70 on all three kits. Here's my best guess as to why they changed it up. All right, I feel like maybe Roland wanted to switch to a unified naming scheme. So no matter what drum set you're looking at, whether it's a TD drum set or a VAD drum set, the numbers match across both kits. So TD716, VAD716. So this resulted in the TD drums having 3 numbers instead of 2 and no letters at the end of the name. Now, as for why they're switching over the module naming scheme to a V instead of TD and then a number, I think they just wanted a neutral naming scheme. Because back when they started naming their modules in the 90s with the TD7 and the TD5 and the TD10, there was no VAD line, so there was no confusion. But now they have 2 separate lines of electronic drums. And when you see a TD module on a VAD kit, in Roland's head, I'm acting as if a corporation has a mind, but in Roland's head, it's a little bit confusing. So they wanted to have a module that had its own unique naming scheme apart from the drums that it comes on. And it's like agnostic to whatever kit that it's on. So they're trying to simplify and make it unique. In case you're wondering what the V stands for, it probably means virtual, just like how V drums is virtual drums, TD is total drum system, and VAD is V drums acoustic design. Now, one last thing to mention before I move ahead to Alesis and Zildjian news is that I will get a chance to play one of these drum sets, hopefully tomorrow. So I will have a video out for you guys. If everything goes right, maybe sometime early next week. We'll have to see how it all shakes out. But I'm looking forward to trying these, because it's one thing to make a video like this, covering the news aspect and the specs and stuff, but I want to get some personal hands-on time with the drum set, actually play the thing, so I can make a more legit video later. All right, so next up, we've got Zildjian. They're making some really big changes to their ALCHEM-E range of electronic drums. The first change is that Zildjian is dropping the price on every drum set they sell by $1,000. So the Gold EX has been lowered to $6,000, the Gold drum set is now $5,000, and the Bronze EX has been lowered down to $3,500. I wasn't really expecting a price drop like that just 3 months into their lifespan, so I think that's a good move on their part. One thing that I've noticed is a little bit of a trend is that sometimes when companies make their first ever flagship electronic drums, like they're breaking into the electronic drum market in general, they don't always pick the best pricing strategy. Geva comes to mind. So when Geva launched, they originally had very high prices in the US market, and now I feel like their stuff is priced much better. So they kind of settled down in the pricing bracket, which is what Zildjian is doing here. So I see this as a positive move, especially the Bronze EX. $3,500 makes a whole lot more sense for that drum set than what it originally sold for. The second change is to their cymbals. According to this post by Edrum Center, they are improving them. As of filming, I don't have exact details on this, but from what I'm hearing, it sounds like they're changing the way the bow trigger might be seated, and the bell trigger may be doubling as a rotation stopper now on the new cymbals. I don't have final photos of these cymbals or anything like that. That might be a little bit different than what I'm describing, but that's just what I'm hearing in general. As far as like performance, it's way too early to know, so we'll have to wait and see what the new cymbals are like. Also, there is an update for their drum module. So if you happen to own one of these drum sets, I would go to the Zildjian website and download update 1.5. It'll make your module better. And the fourth Zildjian update is that they recently did drop some new headphones, the ALCHEM-E Perfect Tune headphones. They have the ALCHEM-E branding, so obviously they're meaning for you to use it with your drum set. Although that drum set is nowhere to be seen in their advertising video. So these are also being marketed as the everyday headphone, kind of like an alternative to Bose or Sony headphones. I have a suspicion that Zildjian is trying to dip their toe in the waters of being a lifestyle brand, kind of like Marshall or Gibson. That's just the vibe that I'm getting from their merch as of late. But we'll have to wait and see if I'm actually right about that. So anyway, back to the headphones. They come with a 6-foot cable to use with your drum module. They also have Bluetooth 5.3 for connecting to your phone or your laptop. They do have noise canceling built in, so it's being marketed as good for muting the sound of your drums or everyday situations. There's an app so you can EQ the sound and also change the amount of background suppression. I think this is kind of cool because I've never heard of a company make headphones for electronic drums that also have noise suppression built in. This is a nice positive feature. Just don't anticipate miracles, because noise suppression inside of wireless headphones is usually best at covering low frequency hums or constant noises. So think airplane cabin noise, or if you're using a lawnmower, it'll cut out the lower mids and lower frequencies, but it'll leave some of the higher tinny frequencies. So I imagine that's what these will perform like, but I have not used them yet. Other specs include a 45-hour battery life, replaceable ear cups, and 3 color options. Now the question is, are they worth that $400 price tag? I have not tested these out, so I don't know. It's too early for me to know. I can't say much about the build quality, the sound quality, or the durability, but I do want to mention I do like the way these look, especially the blue and silver and the black on gold colorway. Actually, all 3 of them, they definitely look very nice. They look more fancy than my black Sony XM4s, which are a competitor to these. I'll just have to wait and see if they sound as nice as they look. Okay, so next up, we got a new announcement over in the Alesis camp. This is the Alesis Nitro Pro. So it's kind of positioned as the next tier above the Nitro Max, and it costs an extra $100. Now, Alesis didn't reach out to send me review units of this one like they did with the Max, so I can't speak from personal experience. But according to one review that I watched on this, it looks like the drum rack is noticeably nicer. It's taller, I think it's a bit larger, and it's more sturdy than the one that comes on the Nitro Max. This is good because in my review of the Nitro Max, I mentioned that the drum rack snare drum arm fell off a couple of times during my playing with it. And just overall, the drum rack needed to be improved. So if you want a better drum rack, you can go with the Pro instead of the Max. It's up to you. I also looked at the specs of both drum sets, and it looks like the Pro weighs an extra 25 pounds or 11 kilograms more than the Nitro Max. I gotta think that a lot of that's probably coming from the new drum rack. But visually, the biggest difference is probably the new snare drum. It's still 10 inches across, just like the other one, but it's got a nice looking shell this time. Oddly enough, that shell is somehow deeper than the one that comes on the Strata Prime. So I just found that to be weird for me. I like the way it looks though. And aside from just vibes, the feel under the stick should be a little bit better due to the fact that you're hitting something that just weighs more. It's definitely nicer. The next upgrade is to the toms. You do get 8-inch toms on the other one as well, but now these are dual zone. And then moving over to the cymbals, they seem to be mostly the same as the ones on the Max. They're all 10 inches across, but the Pro cymbals are all chokeable, while the Max only has one chokeable cymbal as far as I can tell. So that is another upgrade. The kick drum is also a lot larger. It's 8 inches across and it's mesh instead of being that cheaper rubber tower. So that's a nice upgrade too. And there's a kick drum pedal included in both kits. And then one tiny little difference is that I saw that these are different mesh heads. They got the pinstripe on them. I don't know if they actually feel different or not, but visually that is also another change. Moving over to the module, it's got the same shell as the Nitro Max, but the Pro does give you an extra 101 sounds, 4 extra kits, and 20 more play-along songs. There's also free promotional tie-ins to Drumeo and BFD drum software. Both modules have something like this. Also, I noticed that the spec sheet mentions that the Nitro Pro module has a 10 trigger cable snake, while on the Alesis website, the Max is spec'd with a 9 trigger cable snake. I don't know if one of the cables has an extra zone or if it's an extra cable in the box. So that's just what the website said. Now, as far as the overall sound quality of these sounds, of these kits, on the Max, because it's basically the same thing, it's fun, it's punchy, but you do get bored of it over time. So at some point, I do recommend downloading a drum plugin of some kind on your laptop and using the higher quality sounds of a drum plugin versus, the cheaper sounds that come in a beginner module. The BFD software, of course, is free, and check out free version of Stephen Slate Drums 5. That's also really, really fun. So next up, we got the price tag. This costs $600, which in my opinion is probably a fair price for what they're charging. I also noticed that on GuitarCenter.com, the Surge Mesh SE is also the exact same price. It's also getting harder to find that exact kit, so I'm wondering if this is the replacement of that drum set. Speaking of which, there's a bunch of other Alesis drum sets that apparently are on the way out, so let's talk about that. After cross-referencing a bunch of different websites in the United States and Europe, I've noticed that the DM10 MK2 Pro is basically gone. You might find it here and there, but on most websites, they just straight up don't offer that drum set anymore. Also, it looks like the Strike Pro SE is getting a lot harder to find these days. So I'm wondering if they've discontinued that and if the Strata Prime has been the official replacement of that. Which is funny because when I asked Alesis directly, when they were showing off the kit to me, I was like, is this a replacement? Are you getting rid of the Strike Pro SE? And they're like, they were like hemming and hawing. I don't know if they had officially decided or not back then, but it seems to be harder to find that drum set anymore. Obviously, the baseline Nitro, that has been replaced by the Nitro Max. I did get a confirmation there that that's the case. And I think the Alesis Express Nitro is probably on the way out. But I don't know for sure about that one. I'm happy to see that Alesis is slowly but surely redoing their product lineup because they've got a lot of beginner level kits between, $600 and $800 that have been around for ages with tiny little upgrades here and there. And it's just nice that they're actually slowly, seemingly replacing those kits. They have a giant hole in their pricing ladder. They don't have any kits between $800 and $3,500. So I don't know what Alesis' plan is going to be there, if they are purposely leaving that section of the price range empty because they think they can compete really well in the $800 and under price range and then the $3,000 price range, or if they're just leaving that open and they will introduce kits. We'll have to see what they do. All right, so that's all the electronic drum news I got. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.